We have a very special Stupid for Movies interview today with director Dan Ireland. You probably know his name from such movies as The Whole Wide World, Mrs. Palfrey at the Claremont. This is the man who basically discovered Renee Zellweger, and he has discovered another amazing actress in his latest film, Jolene, which is based on an E.L. Doctorow short story. Dan, thanks for being here.
Wait, it's a pleasure.
Well, I know you've got a premiere this evening, so this is why we're doing this early. And
I love it. Thank you very much for jumping through hoops.
Well, not a problem. It's a tremendous film. I mean, this is knowing what you went through to get this thing distributed, and to see it come together so beautifully. And I honestly, I think there are some real Oscar potentials in this film.
God.
You have an unbelievable cast, but Jessica Chastain, the unknown, the newcomer, is the one who just lights the screen up as the lead character. Let's first talk about how this project came together. An E.L. Doctorow short story. How did this fall into your lap?
It literally fell into my lap. My editor was very good friends with my producer, and she had another director, Paul Mazursky, as a matter of fact.
Who the LA Film Critics, of which I'm a member, along with my colleague, we just gave him our Career Achievement Award this year.
And deservedly so.
Yeah.
Well, my producer had a fight with him, and they parted company.
Interesting.
And I got a phone call saying, hey, there is this E.L. Doctorow project that this woman is producing, and she saw your film The Whole Wide World, and she wants to meet you. And I was like, E.L. Doctorow? You're kidding. I'd love to. I didn't know the story. I didn't know Sweetland Stories, the collection of short stories is taken from. So I went for dinner with her, and she called me the next morning at 8 o'clock and said, are you in or are you out? And I was like, I haven't even read it yet. We just had dinner. So she was that kind of person. And I had my coffee, I read the short story. I didn't even need to read the script. At that point, I phoned her up and said, I want to do it. I really want to do it. It scared the hell out of me. And I'm a believer, if anything scares you, jump at it, do it.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's such a tremendous story, and not without giving anything away, but it's a story of a young girl who, in 1970s North Carolina, gets married, and then things in her life sort of spiral progressively out of control, and the tides of life carry her from one episode to another. And it's sort of how this woman grows up without ever really being in charge of her life, yet she's carried along by the tides of fate. And I just thought it was profound and poetic. How difficult was it to make the film once you jumped into that pool?
It really came together. I mean, I think we all had a vision of it, and one of the things that I think Riva Yaris, our producer, liked that I brought up is I said, this is like 5 separate paintings. And one of the things that I was always intrigued by in my life is at the end of Fellini's Satyricon, after seeing this collage of this young man's life and going through it, and it was very episodic, and you saw the ruins, and you saw all the pictures at the very end of, the journeys of the young man's life, and it hit me how to make the film. And I wanted to do it as really 5 different episodes that connected into this girl's life and the trajectory that she has along the way. And especially, this is a child of abuse. I mean,
yeah. And
when you look into the eyes of a child, who's been abused at 12 years old, you see something very, very different. And I thought, trying to find the soul of this girl and to see how she thinks. And with Jessica, I always love to hire an actor that will show you something about the character that it's not on the page. And it happened with Renee Zellweger. And in both cases, they both showed me something about the character that I didn't know. And with Jessica, it was her heart. And it was always, that was sort of the thing that kept Jolene going, is her belief in, in finding, this life for herself where she could believe. But, her big mistake is that she keeps falling, and she keeps falling in the same rut. But it's different, and every rut is different, and everybody promises her the world, and yet no one delivers. So, and at the end of the film, we leave her there, I think with a semblance of hope.
You do.
I wanted to put her, that whole metaphor, putting her right in front of Fredericks of Hollywood and walking down Hollywood Boulevard, there was a girl that was still able to dream on the street of broken dreams. And I had watched Nights of Cabiria just accidentally one night, right in the midst of, before we started the film, and I forgot how much I loved the film. And that last shot of Julieta Messina walking down the Appian Way, and just sort of that strength and that fortitude and that knowledge that she's had, even though she kept repeating the same mistakes. So Jolene's a little Julieta Messina, she's a little Dr. O, she's a little Renee Zellweger, she's a little Jessica Chastain, Well, it's, do you mind talking about the budget? What was the budget on the film? It was around $5 million.
That's incredible, because your cast, I mean, Frances Fisher, Chaz Palminteri, Dermot Mulroney, Michael Vartan, I mean, on and on and on. This is just an incredible cast. How do you get so many great actors with such limited resources? What drew them? Was it the material? Was it Dr. O?
Completely.
Yeah?
Completely. I didn't think that they really knew my work at that point, so I'm blaming it on Dr. O, and he's a nice guy to blame it on.
And he has reacted very positively to the film, hasn't he?
Yeah, he sure has. That blew me away. He didn't want me to do it at first. He saw The Whole Wide World and he was all for me, and then he saw Mrs. Palfrey at the Claremont and thought that I was maybe perhaps too soft, like because of the treatment of Mrs. Palfrey, which is really a chamber piece, and and had to be treated as a chamber piece. It wasn't Harold and Maude where they, got together and had sex and she went off and killed herself. It was a very different, genteel piece. And he looked at it and he was afraid that I wasn't going to be able to hand the rougher, parts of his story. And after a half an hour conversation at 6 o'clock in the morning, when I was in Seattle promoting Mrs. Palfrey at the Claremont, and I had to call him up, he changed his mind, and lucky for me. And I was terrified. First time we went to show it to him, I sat in the back row, and I just watched his reaction. And I didn't know what to think, and he came up at the end and he hugged me. And but he didn't see the full film until 3 months ago.
Talk about, this had a bit of a nightmare distribution history too. I mean, this film should have been released 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And finally that it's coming out, I think those of us who've tracked it for that long are breathing a sigh of relief, because so many good films just don't get distributed these days. Talk about the minefield. The minefield was imminent. It was there. I mean, I personally wanted the film to be 10 minutes shorter, and my producer and I disagreed, because I knew if I'd made it 10 minutes shorter, it would have gotten out a lot quicker. But she stood by her guns, because she loved the vision that we did, and she didn't want to shorten it, and I really did. I still do, but that's, when have you ever heard of a director strong-arming a producer to shorten their film? Good point.
When has there been a director's cut that's been shorter than a producer's cut? Well, I wanted, but still, I don't really care. Right now, I'm so thrilled it's out. I think probably a lot of the problems where we really didn't have big names, because right now even indies have to have huge names to get out there, and it's a risky film. And also, we had 5 offers. She didn't like any of them, and she was bound and determined, my producer Riva, she was bound and determined to get the right person. And then E1 came along and said all the right things, have done all the right things, and they've been amazing. They've been just amazing. Great. Yeah. So I'm thrilled. I'm blown away. I'm kind of sort of stunned, because tonight's sort of the premiere, and I'm like, really? Yeah. Is it really happening after all this time? It's happening. Well, we'll get you out of here in just a moment, and I want to touch also on Rupert Friend, who is one of the long
train of men who sort of fall into her life here. It's the second time you've worked with him. Totally different performance from Mrs. Palfrey.
Completely.
And you know, we were talking even before this, not an actor that I normally respond to so well, but in your films you get something out of him that really, really clicks with me. Talk a little bit about your relationship with him, because this is the second time around.
Well, I looked at 75 guys for Ludo in Mrs. Palfrey, and it came down to two people. It came down to Dominic Cooper, who was on stage at the time at the National doing the History Boys, and Rupert. But I was all set to go with Dominic. I was completely convinced, but I had to equal Joan Plowright, and I knew unless I found an actor that could go head and shoulders with her, that the film would never ever work. Rupert walked in. He was the very last guy in. Out of like 75 people, my casting director wanted to kill me. Always my casting directors want to kill me, because I usually will do that until I find the right person. I'll just keep seeing people. And Rupert walked in, and that was it. I knew it was him, and I don't know why. There's an instinct, I think, that you get, like, after you've been lucky, and I was really lucky with Renee. I was really lucky with Emmy Rossum. I was really lucky with Thomas Jane. And I learned in that period of time to trust my instinct. And I think what I said to you earlier, look for the actor that shows you something about the part and the character that you don't know, and gives you something there that you all of a sudden connect, the sum and the total of the person. Well, Rupert came in and he owned it. He owned it. And from that point on, it was Rupert. And even though his role in Mrs. Palfrey was, you know, much more gentle and soulful, I knew he could do this guy.
Yeah.
And I knew he wanted to do this guy. I knew he wanted to be dark. But hey, how about Michael Vartan?
Amazing.
From like, you
really
know,
amazing.
Monster-in-Law, and what was the Drew Barrymore film he did? Never Been Kissed, I think. And
he was also in The Pallbearer, which a friend of mine directed. So yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, he came into me and he said, "I don't want to be the romantic comedy guy anymore. I'll do anything to play this guy." And I saw such commitment and passion in him that I wanted to go with him.
It's a tough part. That's a tough part too.
It's almost impossible.
Yeah.
And he's so perfect.
He has to be pious and violent and believable in both.
And charming and charming. A jerk.
Yeah.
And then, you know what? But you can't resist him.
You can't.
And he's overpowering.
And she can't either.
Well, you know, and he plays it so perfectly, and his turn is so
magnificent.
Yeah.
It's a tough scene to watch.
And Frances Fisher, I mean, had never done anything like that. It was really, I think the actors really came to it, and I'm just sort of thinking about your question before, why they did it. I don't think they'd ever done roles quite like that before, and I wanted to go with them. I mean, working on a film, it's the greatest fun of working with an actor is your collaboration.
Well, you did a great job.
Thank you.
We'll let you get out of here to your premiere. Dan Ireland, thank you so much for taking time for our show.
Thank you.
It's Jolene is the film. It is based on a short story by E.L. Doctorow, and it is a tremendous film, and it has had a long, tumultuous path coming to theaters. But for all of our fans and all of our viewers, please go out, find this film, find Jolene. You will not be disappointed. And honestly, there's always Oscar buzz around the little films. I think it's I really, really feel like Jessica Chastain has a real dark horse chance.
You know, she's done 9 films since my film.
There you go.
My film got her into Tree of Life, and
like
the rest
Renee
of
again.
It. Yeah.
You find them. You have a knack for it. Well, thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Wade.
And there we go. We're going to let him go to his premiere.
Thank you.
We'll see you again at Stupid for Movies.
She had another director, Paul Mazursky, as a matter of fact.
Who the LA Film Critics, of which I'm a member, along with my colleague, we just gave him our Career Achievement Award this year.
And deservedly so.
Yeah.
Well, my producer had a fight with him, and they parted company.
Interesting.
And I got a phone call.
Well, not a problem. It's a tremendous film. I mean, this is knowing what you went through to get this thing distributed. and to see it come together so beautifully. And I honestly, I think there are some real Oscar potentials in this film.
God.
You have an unbelievable cast, but Jessica Chastain, the unknown, the newcomer, is the one just... We have a very special Stupid for Movies interview today with director Dan Ireland. You probably know his name from such movies as The Whole Wide World, Mrs. Palfrey at the Claremont. This is the man who basically discovered Renee Zellweger, and he has discovered another amazing actress in his latest film, Jolene, which is based on an E.L. Doctorow short story. Dan, thanks for being here.
Oh, wait, it's a pleasure.
Well, I know you've got a premiere this evening, so this is why we're doing this early. And
I love it. Thank you very much for jumping through hoops.
Lights the screen up as the lead character. Let's first talk about how this project came together. An E.L. Doctorow short story. How did this fall into your lap?
It literally fell into my lap. My editor was very good friends with my producer, and